The death of God is about the drying up of a horizon of meaning and of a whole form of human life.
Where do we stand in the illusion it makes? What kind of space are we invited into?
The material relations between people become social relations between things. When we look at toasters, corn, and TVs,
we still, to a large extent, live in the interregnum between worlds, if you will, or between paradigms. Not many people in the history of the world have faced that.
Diet Soap is a Sublation Media podcast. Jared Bauer is the former CEO of Wisecrack and the YouTuber behind the creatively entitled Jared Bauer YouTube channel. On his new channel, Jared blogs about Hollywood and pop culture. And in today's episode of Diet Soap, we're going to discuss the current digital entertainment landscape. It'll be a change of pace. We're not going to dive into the critique of the Gotha program or talk about AOC or anything like that. We're going to just talk about
and I know very little about Hegel.
Yeah, we're not going to discuss Hegel. But Jared, I want to pick your brain in this episode because I want to get a sense of the industry that I'm trying to compete in. You know, I'm making these different kinds of content products. Is that what I would call them? You know, and I've got investors now, and they're like saying, "So what's our vision?" Yeah. And I'm like, well, basically the question is, how will Sublation become a media empire? And I don't know. We're going to make Marxism the next hip hop.
Yeah, how do you succeed at capitalism while criticizing capitalism?
That's right.
It's a tough cookie.
Yeah. But in your recent episode of one of your videos, you talked about the South Park cartoon, and it was entitled Streaming Wars.
Yeah.
And or streaming wars, I should say, like that. The episode describes how these streaming wars are leading to a situation that guarantees the quality of the content will decline and become like piss, I guess. And,
right. That's kind of the metaphor of the episodes.
Yeah. Do you think that's true? And why do you think that's happening?
Well, the South Park episode seems to make the argument that because the overall model for a lot of these streaming platforms, because there's so many, everybody knows that not all of them are going to be able to survive, that not all of them are going to actually generate meaningful profit, if even meaningful revenue. So although now we have your Peacocks and your Paramount Pluses, and even IMDb has a streaming platform, and Roku is making original content, they're all going to basically become Quibbies in that. I mean, Quibi is a unique catastrophe, but in the sense that they're basically just going to get bought out. Their content libraries are going to get bought out by a larger conglomerate. Maybe it'll be Netflix. Maybe it'll be, HBO, if even they survive. And so the argument is that basically all of the content that they're making are basically just assets that look good in a portfolio, but since all of the numbers in terms of viewership is completely a black box. I mean, I would imagine during an acquisition, they would, request numbers like that. I don't know how you would prove it though. That really in the South Park episode, they used the metaphor of like boats that stream down a water, because instead of content streaming services, they talk about water streaming services are kind of the stand-in for the business. And the idea is that the boats just validate the service. So in the sense, like Paramount Plus, they're investing in South Park. They're investing in bringing back Beavis and Butthead. Nobody really cares how good this stuff is. It's just you're associating yourself with recognizable, strong IP that just increases your market valuation and just allows for some richer guy to come acquire you.
Right.
And there's the B plot of the episode, which is like Cartman gets fake tits. He tries to convince his mom to get fake tits so that she'll be more appealing to a rich guy. And it seems to be the entire thing is that like we live in an economy now where there are so few people who have so much money that the economic game is just appealing to them to get bought out by then. You don't even have to have revenue. You just need to convince a rich guy that it'll look good in his portfolio.
Right. Okay. And this is, this is the question, right? For me, it's like, how do I get beyond, like, I have some investment money. How do I turn that money into revenue is like the thing that I'm constantly facing. But I want to talk about the the way the streaming wars have been going on, and see if we can talk about it in reality rather than in South Park.
Right.
When Disney Plus arrived, people were telling me, a friend of mine was telling me, "Oh, this is going to be the end of Netflix. That this is changing the whole game. The big entertainment conglomerates are going to come in. They're going to just dominate the streaming world, and the independents, and Netflix was, even though it was very large, it's considered kind of an independent, are going to go away. And that isn't quite happening, but it's sort of, there's a trend. Netflix is declining, I believe.
Yeah, they just lost another 1 million subscribers in their last quarter, which was actually less than they thought was going to happen. But it does seem like that's a possibility. I don't think that Disney Plus has really been killing it by any means, but Netflix just has, first of all, now they're going to start introducing ads. They're going to start tightening up on password sharing. This is nothing that anybody wants to hear, especially when all the content offerings, all these IPs that they spent so much money on, like Resident Evil, and, they made a $200 million movie with Ryan Gosling, directed by the guys who created Avengers Endgame, and it's garbage. The Resident Evil show is unwatchable. I mean, they might be in some trouble because, I mean, at least for my money's worth, if I get the notification that Netflix will not allow me to share the password with my family, which is what I currently do, I will not pay for my own subscription. No way.
No, I mean, I think a lot of people are staying with Netflix because they are subsidizing a whole group of people who might occasionally use it. I mean, I don't remember the last time I watched anything on Netflix, come to think of it. Back in the day, it used to be that if you were paying for content at all, you were at the equivalent of a boomer. I don't know what they would call you back then, but everyone would just go torrent what they wanted to see and not worry about paying for anything.
Well, I kind of feel like that we're still in that day. I just recently started paying for a VPN, and I mean, I promise you, if you just tell the VPN that you live in Turkey, it's so easy to find these libraries of pretty much every movie ever made that's streaming for free on 720p. And all you have to do is watch 2 ads for an online casino before the movie starts, and it just streams perfectly.
Oh, okay.
So there you go.
So, all right then. So there's a big problem with the model.
Yeah.
But what I wonder is, okay, well, let me put it this way. Back in 2009, there was a guy named Seth Godin, and he's still probably around. He wrote a book entitled Purple Cow, and in it he claimed that Campbell soup, the days of Campbell soup are ending, and that instead of Campbell soup, we're going to be seeing a world in which there are 1,000 different brands of soup, each one catered to an individual demographic and market, that because of the internet and the way that's transformed distribution, no one's going to be able to lock down a monopoly on shelf space, and that isn't even going to be the way people find products, is by just going to a store and finding whatever's there, and therefore entrepreneurs ought to be really thinking about being creative, meeting their niche, finding a demographic and market that they can cater to, and being the very best at what they do, that creating the highest quality version of the soup. And you would think that the entertainment industry would be the industry where that really would be the case, because there are no physical shelves anymore, really. And we could compete, and it seems like we are kind of competing for small niches and small markets. And yet these giant monopolies are dominating distribution and the streaming wars. And it feels like a contradiction. On the one hand, we're pushed in the direction of finding small niches and getting within other various bubbles to reach an audience and staying in there, not trying to do too much of a variety of things. And yet, on the other hand, to really be successful, you have to be part of a giant conglomerate and be able to get pushed to a mass audience. And I wonder if you see that contradiction and can explain to me why that would be so.
So I think what you discussed with the Campbell Soup thing, I mean, that is kind of happening on YouTube in the sense that individual creators, they're able to find success if they're able to really capture a niche, to really find a very reliable viewing relationship within that niche so that the algorithm can feel confident that if it continues to promote your content to other users who behave similarly to the people who keep watching your content, then it will do so. It will continue to promote you to those people. They use these things in like these ad platforms, which is what YouTube is. You know, it's basically they make money by selling ads. So, I mean, I can't prove this, but you can feel pretty confident that if people are clicking on the ads in your video, then the algorithm is going to think, oh, wow, there's something about this video that makes people click the ads. Let's promote it. But anyway, the interesting thing about that contra to the streaming wars with these bigger platforms is that, as the South Park episode kind of points to, is like the name of the game there is to kind of gesture and pretend like you are making that play at being a big conglomerate. Like, you know, Roku, for example, their streaming platform. I don't know a single person who pays for Roku streaming content, but, you know, the sales deck and the way that they present themselves is that they are going to be, you know, Netflix or bigger or something like that. So, you know, and to create a platform like that, you really can't go for that niche game. And I think, you know, the difference is that, you know, Roku is a platform in that YouTube is a platform. And it just really kind of goes to show the enormous power of YouTube in that, like, you know, YouTube is multiple times bigger than television, but nobody really owns television. But Google does own YouTube. They own the entire medium or platform. I guess you can kind of use it interchangeably. But because of that, it seems like there's kind of this subclass of people, of creators, that are doing the niche Campbell Soup thing, whereas there are the people that are more on the kind of like, you know, huge grand enterprise level of raising millions and millions of dollars, trying to become the platform, the thing that has to have this all-encompassing thing that everyone from every age demographic and every country will want to engage with.
Yeah. So what they're trying to do is create like maybe the old studio system, but online, something like that, right? You have
right,
a few
because they can produce their own content and also control the distribution of it.
Right. And what I wanted to understand is how, well, let's talk about Roku. So Roku have they purchased other IP? Do they have some deal with some old IP owners?
Well, so they're actually the ones that picked up the majority of Quibi's content once Quibi went under. So
remind me what Quibi had. What did Quibi have?
Well, so there are some kind of digital content creators that would pitch content to Quibi, but mostly Quibi was creating original stuff. So, I mean, I guess you could argue that they established new IP on Quibi and then it was bought by Roku. Roku's also the one who's making that Weird Al Yankovic movie starring Daniel Radcliffe, which I guess, you know, Weird Al Yankovic is IP in his own sense. But other than that, like, I mean, I don't really know. I don't think that, you know, they're obviously not as well funded as Paramount or HBO or, you know, Warner. So, but yeah. And again, like, that's the perfect example of a streaming platform that's just posturing to get bought out. They're just, the whole game is, can we spend $100 million to get content that we can then sell for $400 million?
Right. And they when you say get content, you mean produce content in this case, for the most part. Because the big thing with Netflix is they had access to a variety of libraries, right? They would bring old movies, new movies, old TV shows. They were all on Netflix. It was a place to find streaming content that, you know, like if you wanted to watch Friends, you would watch it on Netflix. That was a big deal for them when they had that. I don't know if it's still there. I don't think it is, but and things would rotate on and off. And it was, and now all of these IP, you know, the people who own the IP, these different companies, are now creating their own streaming services and taking that from Netflix. It's, to me, it seems like like Peacock or I don't know, Hulu are weaker platforms than Netflix was because they're stuck with only their own IP, right? And so like I might be on Peacock to watch an episode of Columbo from 1973 or something, but then I'm done when I'm done with my Columbo phase, I'm done with Peacock altogether. Whereas if they had a more of a variety of kind of content, I might stick around for other things. But I just it seems to me like the old network TV model where you would make short-term deals to get all sorts of different content onto your platform is dying, and everything's getting fragmented. And I guess some company's going to come along and just buy up as many libraries as possible. New content is going to be difficult to create in such a way that it has cultural resonance so that it becomes valuable.
Right.
Because unless, maybe an HBO can do that still. Maybe Netflix used to be able to do that with Stranger Things, but it seems like without a mass platform, you're not going to be able to do that. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, that's the weird thing about Netflix's current strategy is that, the whole reason that they started making all this original content was that they couldn't continue to lease or, get the streaming rights to shows like The Office and Friends, which is still by and large the reason why people maintain their memberships to these platforms, because, they watch The Office every night before they go to bed or something like that. Now, The Office hasn't been on there for a long time, and I know that's just one show, but I really think that it is in no small part to a reason why Netflix has had some issues recently. But another thing that Netflix does is that it's very rare that they will produce a show more than 3 seasons. And the reason is that because if you, first of all, Netflix is still kind of playing in the Hollywood game where they still have to deal with the Screen Actors Guild. They have to deal with all the other unions. And basically, if your show gets past 3 seasons for a 4th season, that's when everything starts getting significantly more expensive to produce. And so Netflix is saying, well, ultimately, we're just trying to get people to subscribe. If people watch up to 3 seasons of something, we feel confident that we've kind of hooked them enough. They'll remain having subscribed, and we'll just go ahead and make another show, ideally of the same level of quality that, and they won't have to, pay that like 2 or 3x amount of more money for those actors. But the weird thing about this is that, that just makes it so that it's very rare that they actually have a show that has that library effect that people will definitely pay for, like, the however many seasons of The Office or like the 14 seasons of Friends or whatever. So like, Stranger Things is one of the only Netflix series that you'll see goes to 4 seasons. But I mean, it's Stranger Things seems to be the only hit that they've really had. I'm trying to think of another one. They had these small hits like, The Haunting of Hill House was cool for a season. But it does seem like, I mean, I don't have any money in Netflix. I mean, I don't have a lot of faith in that, because the whole thing was that we're going to stop paying for The Office. We're going to make our own stuff. So down the line, it's going to be cheaper, and we're going to make stuff that's just as good so that people will maintain their subscription to continue watching that over and over again, like they do The Office. But they just haven't been able to do that.
There's a show. I mean, since we're just talking about Netflix now, I want to point out there's a show on Netflix called Living with Yourself. It stars Paul Rudd, and he's cloned. He goes to a service.
I remember this.
Yeah. And he's going to we can improve you. We can make a better version of you. If you're willing to have your old self die, we will make a new version of you that's even better. And it turns out it's like literal, like they clone him and make a superior version of him. And then they gas him and throw his body in a ditch, but the gas, they don't actually kill him. And so he hitchhikes back home, and that's the show. And it lasted 1 season, and I really enjoyed it. And then it just stopped. It was like it ended with a cliffhanger episode. There's no more of it as far as I can tell. I've not heard any plans to continue it. And it seemed like the kind of thing that if they had made more, it might have actually gained a cult following and been a successful show. Man,
yeah.
But you barely remember it exists. But Paul Rudd,
I remember it coming out, but then that also reminds me of like something that I liked on Netflix was the show Maniac that had Jonah Hill and Emma Stone in it. It was the Cary Fukunaga show, and I don't think it was ever meant to be a series, but again, it was just kind of this short 6-episode series. And after that, there's very little reason to even believe that Netflix is going to be creating things that are that interesting regularly. And so, yeah, I don't think it's, I mean, I think things could change. I mean,
but what makes it, what's the barrier to making really interesting things for a company like Netflix? Is it that they don't have the budgets? Is it that they are controlled by their demographic research and they're trying to niche down? What's the limit there?
It's a good question. I mean, you look at shows like the recent Resident Evil show. Resident Evil's a huge video game IP. I mean, they've made like 8 movies for Resident Evil. It does really well internationally. You would think that with 8 movies, for better or worse, they would have learned kind of what makes this show tick in a narrative form, or at least what doesn't work. But it's just getting universally criticized. And there's of course like what a lot of people have considered to be kind of the more right-wing criticism is that like Netflix is so preoccupied with quote unquote wokeness. And like
not anymore.
The whole Dave Chappelle thing, sure. But right. But the whole criticism with Resident Evil is that like, the at least one of the criticisms is that like some of the younger girl characters are so like snarky, like so empowered in their kind of like young female snarkiness and like just complete competence because, we can't we can't show any kind of a minority figure that's anything less than perfect. It actually just makes the show feel like just a lot of like talking down to you misandry. And that stuff does matter. Like, and I think that it's becoming harder and harder for people to disagree, even though, people on the left, especially, and it's interesting. I've even, watched some of your content and you've had a number of people, you have a whole podcast, for example, of 2 people who work within the social justice industry. Even they are quite critical about some of the kind of ideological assertions that are being made within this industry, the kind of behavior that they expect people to submit to. You had another person on that would talk about how, wokeness is just a different flavor of racism. But even then, like, I find that people on the left are so hesitant to use the same strong language to condemn what is referred to as wokeness as the right. And from what I can, in my opinion, it's really just because like you don't want to sound like your enemy. But I find that it's getting, as things keep coming out, like even the new Star Wars show, I know you want to talk about Star Wars. Mm-hmm. There are just some, really just like egregious mistakes. For example, in the new Star Wars show, did you see it, by the way?
No, I was going to talk about the Star Wars movies because I'm so behind the times that I'm caught up to the last of the J.J. Abrams Star Wars movies, but I have not seen The Mandalorian. I have not seen the streaming shows. My impression is that The Mandalorian is really good. I've heard that it's good and that they're more successful with the streaming shows than they were with the movies. But from
what I actually have not seen The Mandalorian either, but from what I understand, that really only extends to The Mandalorian, because so far there's been The Mandalorian and there's been the Book of Boba Fett, which was apparently pretty terrible. And then there was Obi-Wan, which is the one I watched just because, I've got some prequel nostalgia. I like Ewan McGregor. I like Hayden Christensen, so I watched that. But the example I was going to draw from that one is that in the very first episode, we have like this 10-year-old Leia, and she gets kidnapped in the first episode. And there's this really awkward scene where there's like these adults who are chasing this 10-year-old girl who, is 10. She can't run very fast. She doesn't look terribly athletic when she's running from these people. And it just looks awkward. Like, it just doesn't look believable. And, there are all these YouTube videos of people saying, hey, I fixed the scene. It's basically just like Leia sees her kidnappers, smash to black. We know that she's kidnapped. Much better scene. But it just seems like Hollywood seems to be stuck in this kind of social malaise, this social condition where people don't feel like they can express a criticism like that. Like perhaps the editor or the director doesn't feel safe in saying like, hey, this looks a little bit goofy. Like this 10-year-old girl doesn't look like an acrobat. She doesn't look like somebody who could actually hold their own against these adults. And as a result, there are these, just very obvious, egregious mistakes that are being made. And it's kind of embarrassing.
So it sounds like there's two kind of real difficulties for the entertainment industry. One is that the kind of financial and distribution model is treacherous and in contradiction with itself. Like you need to niche down, but you also need to dominate distribution in order to get anywhere. And the other is that the class of people who can gain access to Hollywood and produce shows and write for Hollywood are just themselves all trapped in some sort of strange woke ideology or at least
I mean, and from my completely anecdotal experience in Hollywood, it does seem like the kind of people who are at the top are the nepotists. These are the people that have been put in power by their parents or their parents' friends. So these are all either multimillionaires or the sons and daughters of multimillionaires. And again, completely anecdotally, I can say that in my experience, the wokest people have been the rich ones. And of course, I'm armchair psychoanalyzing here, but I can only think that like the thing about wokeness is it really offers a completely class agnostic way to kind of feel like you're the good guy and that you are fighting for justice while not being forced to admit that like, oh, okay, I'm hoarding all of this wealth and resisting any ability to or any kind of mission to change that. And that's kind of the most pathologically woke people I've known are just like these really, really rich kids, basically. And those are the people who are running Hollywood.
This makes perfect sense that they would dominate Hollywood and be the ones who get to write scripts and be the ones who get to make movies. Because, as we said at the outset, it doesn't matter if you make money as long as you have some access to enough funds to invest with basically it's all a speculative financial investment. It's like, I mean, and in the past that has worked. I mean, Amazon didn't make money for a long time. So you get a bunch of capital, you invest for the long haul, you just dump cash into it. Uber is the same way. And then with the hope that at the end, you'll have just amassed enough capital that you will dominate the space and be able to make money because you're the only game in town, creating monopoly power that way, I guess. So that means that the people who have access are going to be the ones who, have access to cash.
And then that exact same mode will create all these other players who realize that, somebody's in town trying to get market dominance. If we just kind of set ourselves up as these small speed bumps that they'll just rail over with money, we can get a huge payday.
Right. Yeah. So you become, the what is it? Pets.com with the hope that someone will come along and buy up your company and dump millions of dollars into your .com. And then, you get out before the whole bubble collapses. Is that the plan?
Something like that. Exactly.
Yeah. Sounds great.
I mean, you just, sometimes the game isn't even, you don't even think that far ahead. Sometimes the game is literally just, all right, you raised money once. You're able to raise enough money to give you and maybe the people around you enough salary. Now the game is to, there's no real long-term prospect in this business. Well, we all want to keep our salaries. We all want to keep our jobs. Let's just, find a way to kind of posture ourselves so that we can just keep raising more money. Just to kind of keep the party going. I've seen some weird things in the very brief time that I was in the startup world. I mean, I've seen, sometimes there are companies that are acquired for reasons that I can't understand. I've seen these companies that are like app companies where the app has tens of users and seemingly for no other reason that I can understand other than the founder's dad is, some like uber Harvard connected guy who 6 Harvard buildings are named after. His company ends up getting acquired by a huge tech company that we've all heard of. they're able to spin it in some way to where like, oh yeah, they acquired us for the technology or something like that. Maybe that's true, but I can't help but believe that this cronyism stuff is much more relevant than even the most cynical of lefties think. Like, I mean, no one, even cynical lefties don't think that people buy companies for tens of millions of dollars as a favor. But I don't know. I kind of question that, to be honest.
Yeah, yeah. So, well, I mean, look, one of the things that you're doing for me right now is, warning me off of strategies for keeping sublation going that won't work or that I want to avoid. Like, one thing I definitely want to avoid is just raising, because I raised initial capital and just like, oh, well, we spent that, let's raise some more. And you just got to.
Well, I mean, sometimes you got to do that. Like, I'm not saying that that's like always a bad idea.
Yeah, but that can't be the plan. That can't be the aim, right?
Right, of course.
So that's a terrible model. On the other hand, I know of left-wing publishers that had millions actually spent over a long time, like 12, 15 years, and only became profitable after spending that much initial capital. So it's
well, I mean, that was the case with my company, with Wisecrack. Like, we were able to reach profitability after 2 capital investments, 2 rounds.
Yeah. And how long did that take you?
Let's see. The company, we raised our first round in the beginning of 2014, and we basically got the company to like selling form in 2019. So that was like, I would say closer to 6 years. Yeah.
And so
roughly.
At what point did you start to make more revenue than you were spending before you sold it? Or did you only get to a point where you could sell it and that's how you made money?
For us, it was really more of a case of we were continuing to like scale. And then I don't know if you remember, but like basically after Trump was elected, Facebook had this kind of like mini freak out where Zuckerberg basically said, all right, we're killing video because like something bad has happened. And like overnight, all of like, there was, for example, there was that brand Tasty, all those top down cooking videos that dominated everyone's timeline for a long time. Like overnight, all businesses like that kind of went down. And then like a couple of years later, they came back up. But the reason I say that is because like once that happened, we ended up kind of scaling back, and we kind of scaled back into profitability. Rather than like, us kind of maintaining a certain like size of company and just continuing to perform better and better until we hit profitable. We kind of like,
you scaled
the
up
company. We were like breaking even, but continuing to grow slowly, and then kind of just scaled back.
Well, breaking even is better than what I was thinking about, which is where you just get an infusion of capital, spend it, and then have to get another infusion of capital, spend that rather, as long as you were like meeting.
Well, so I'm sorry. We actually weren't breaking even till the second round. So we did go through that in the first one.
Right. Yeah. And we may end up going through that too. And I'm hoping it will take a longer amount of time than it could. But the main thing here is that it seems as though, I mean, for a content creator, like you and I are both content creators, there's like 2 models. One is the YouTube model where you develop your own audience, you try to go direct to consumer, and the other is where you try to broker deals with these bigger streams, right? You did both with Wisecrack.
When you say bigger streams, what are you referring to?
Like Netflix or bigger streamers,
so ours
or TV even, or everything's a stream now in my head. Studios.
Yeah, totally. I mean, it's hard to, it seems like Netflix doesn't really care that much about influencers. It's hard to really get the attention of those bigger guys. The ones that we were able to find success with were like an Audible original series with Amazon, for example. The publishing world with Random House. And we did have our first show, Thug Notes, was briefly on BET for it was a segment on a different show called The Experiment for a season. But overall, and then we had we had to deal with Medium at one point. And kind of just making sure that those deals continued was kind of the things outside of the content game that were working for us.
And that probably you had someone on staff who was going out and seeking those deals for.
Yeah, we had a sales guy. I can't. And that's another thing we talked about, like the cronyist aspect of, capitalism, and even like so there's, on the one hand, having a good sales guy is great because, it, depending on who he knows, he's able to get you the good deals. But it's not only that, it's also just like the dollar amount of the deals can change depending on how good your sales guy is. I mean, it really is. When you hire a sales guy, you're also just like hiring somebody who's just like in a good club. He's like in the deal above certain number of dollar club. See, you know what I'm saying?
Right. Like he has represented enough clients that he has the network of relations that he can get you in.
Totally. It's just like you're paying for a guy who can just pick up the phone and say, hey, you son of a bitch, guy with a bunch of money who like I'm bros with, pay me this much, whatever. Like, it's just like, this like, it's pre-existing relationships.
Right. Yeah. And so we've been talking for about 35 minutes. I think I want to now get to the meat of this, which is, to talk about just YouTube, like because one of the nice things about YouTube is that it is a place where people who have no pre-existing relationships, who have no connections, who aren't part of the big club, can start. Yeah. And they can create an audience and they can develop. But it does seem to me like there's a ceiling on the kinds of things that you can do launching from YouTube. It may be less the case, or it might have been less the case in the past, but it seems to me more and more the case that certain kinds of content just can't fly on YouTube. So you're not going to be able to develop, like if you want to be a filmmaker or make episodic television, you can't start by making that content for YouTube and have much success, perhaps. So I don't know.
It's just not built for that, and it's not built for that for in a number of ways. I mean, so first of all, obviously, you could never sustain a business model. Like even if a movie got 30 million views, that wouldn't be enough money to make another movie. I mean, even like the lowest budget indie movie wouldn't really. Well, I mean, the lowest budget they can get pretty low, but you know what I mean. Like you can't really you can't pay a crew for that, but also. Like the platform just doesn't think of itself like that. So when the algorithm is so more than ever, one thing that's very different is maybe like when I first started on YouTube, there wasn't as much emphasis on like what people call doom scrolling these days. Just the fact that when people are engaging with YouTube, first of all, they're most often engaging with it on a phone, and usually they're not even going to their subscription page. They're just at the home page and they're just scrolling until something hits. Back when BuzzFeed first started, closer to like 2012, 2013, the way that most content was found was shareability. So, you had like all these BuzzFeed videos that were very successful that were like, 6 things all brothers know or whatever. And so that would be very shareable among people who had brothers. And so brothers would share it with their brother. And then that would incentivize the algorithm to say, hey, this is really special. But these days, that shareability thing doesn't really exist anymore. It really is just, since people are just scrolling until they find something and they click on, most content is found and viewed and succeeds based on the way that it functions within the algorithm. So kind of like playing that algorithm game, even though it's just full of a bunch of hypotheses, it's all a black box. Nobody really knows what they're doing except for these high data priests that work at Google.
Mr. Beast knows. Mr. Beast knows what he's
doing. That guy, yeah. I mean, he knows. he definitely knows something. I think he knows how to make really good content. And of course, that's not, I mean, of course, the algorithm knows that if people are really enjoying the content or that there's high engagement with it, that they'll continue to promote it. But yeah, I think he just really knows how to make content that people will just click on as soon as they see. But having said that, like, you know, the algorithm is not built to kind of measure how people engage with a movie, you know, in a sense, like there are certain behaviors that people exhibit while they're watching a video that can clue the algorithm into what the quality of the video is. That whatever that is, it's not the same as the behavior that someone does when they're watching a movie. So it's not only the fact that economically it's not feasible to make a movie and, like, you know, have it be successful on YouTube, but it also just won't be spread. It won't be found. It won't find the audience because the platform's not built to promote a piece of content like that.
What's the difference in the behavior when you're watching a 2-hour movie as to watching a 2-hour live stream? Say?
Yeah, I mean, well, so first of all, it could be things like, you know, stopping the video, sharing it, commenting, you know, like deciding to like stop it, share it on Facebook. You know, it's hard to tell exactly what the metrics are that YouTube actually measures when you're watching these things. But from what I understand, and just from what I understand on the level of sophistication in which they're actually able to measure how people engage with their ads, and, you know, like it's pretty sophisticated. I have to imagine that it's probably a similar sophistication in measuring how people, and it could be like things like, you know, where are people's eyes drawn to at the time? When are they paying attention? When are they not paying attention? When are they scrolling through comments? When are they, you know,
how can they tell where
like
your
that.
eyes are drawn to? Are they
I have
using
no
your
idea.
webcam?
I have no idea. I've seen like videos of like people claiming that they could do that, but I haven't looked into it. I have no idea.
Okay, that's scary if they're tracking your eye movement.
I wouldn't be surprised, but
wow,
that could be very far fetched. I don't actually know that, but like, well, for example, I'm just trying to give an idea of like, you know, every time that you touch the screen, that is Google is running some sort of test on you. You know, every action you do is meant to generate a learning for them.
And I was thinking about watching it on a computer screen like this, but then even every time you click or whatever. Right. But most people are watching these things on their phones.
Right.
And they don't watch movies on their phones quite to the same degree, right? They watch
I hope
movies.
Not.
Yeah. So yeah, do you think YouTube is wanting to become a medium that people will consume through their television sets, like, but to you know?
No, absolutely not. I mean, for the simple reason that what YouTube wants you to do is click on the ad and buy the product, because if you click on the ad and buy the product, then they're able to show successful metrics to the giant companies that are spending millions of dollars a month to buy ads on YouTube. And then they're able to say, hey, look how successful we've been. You should scale up. You should spend $2 million a month instead of $1 million a month. If you watch content on television, you know, your television might not be smart enough to have your credit card number in it. You know, you can't just have that immediate click, buy, ship, you know, and that's ultimately what runs the entire business.
Right. I mean, they did dip their toe into the Netflix model for a bit, right? They did that Karate
with
Kid
YouTube Red.
Yeah. Which I, by the way, am still subscribed to, just so I can turn YouTube on my phone and listen to a Hegel lecture, and then turn the screen off, you know?
Yeah.
So
well, that's the best part of the service, not really even the premium shows.
It's just the Hegel lectures,
or just the ability to have your phone screen off and listen to YouTube.
Right. That is one of the major selling points of the service. And what that's about is about giving you the ability to consume YouTube without the ads, isn't it? Without looking at the ads.
Right. But I mean, but still, they make most of their money not from people who are subscribing, but from giant companies who are spending seven figures. I mean, a month, maybe even sometimes a week.
Wow. And that also means that those ad blocker extensions must not be too pervasive for.
Yeah, I mean, I guess not. I mean, if in theory YouTube is a successful business, which I think it is, if you look at their reportings, then yeah, I mean, there are so many people that engage or that are on YouTube. Even if half of them have ad blockers on, it's still one of the biggest ad networks in the world.
Right. And so again, to back up a little bit, we started talking about streaming services like Netflix and Disney Plus and Hulu and so forth, and Roku, and now we're talking about YouTube. And as we talk about YouTube, it occurs to me that despite the fact that you might spend a good amount of money to produce a video, have high production values, hire actors, write a script, have a little team writing scripts that you used to have at Wisecrack. Nonetheless, the platform you're on is not a media platform. It's a social media platform.
Right. Exactly.
Right. Yeah. And so that makes it a very different proposition. It's closer to Instagram than it is to Netflix.
But,
Ultimately.
I mean, there's what you do with it is up in the air. I mean, I have no idea. I don't think anybody knows what, for example, Ben Shapiro's subscriber or people who pay for the Daily Wire every month or whatever. But, he, as like a marketing platform that brings people to another platform that's on some sort of destination page like the Daily Wire, like, that's still possible. And, there have been, for example, there are some unicorns out there. For example, Donut Media is this car culture thing. They recently got acquired. They were stupendously successful, despite the fact that, they had production quality that was more akin to like something that you would see on Discovery Channel, like real reality TV show stuff. So, I mean, it does happen. Right. YouTube is so big. It's almost impossible to comprehend. It's like hundreds of times larger than television these days. There's seemingly, for every rule that I might say, oh, this doesn't work on YouTube and that does work, I mean, there's always going to be an exception just because of how big it is.
Right. So, okay, why do you think the Daily Wire, I mean, I think the Daily Wire is a successful platform. I'm going to just guess that it is. And here's why I'm guessing that it is. I think it is because I almost signed up for it recently. I came this close to signing up for Daily Wire because I wanted to.
Let me guess. Can I guess why?
Yeah.
Because you wanted to watch What Is a Woman.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the reason I wanted to watch What Is a Woman is so that I could maybe make a video about it. Right.
Right.
And which I'm now, I have seen it. I will say I have seen it. I did not sign up for Daily Wire. We'll leave it at that. But
yeah. I mean, I would say the same thing. VPN. Say you're in Turkey. Wink, wink.
Yeah, I don't know what happened. I just asked my kid, "Hey, can you throw this movie up on our Plex family Plex?" And he's like, "Sure." Boom.
Magic.
Yeah. So anyway, but that shows you the reach of Daily Wire's advertising campaign and the intelligence of their content creation and marketing. Because I'm not a conservative, despite whatever people might say, right?
Do people
I was. Some people say he's a red, brown, blah blah blah. Whatever people say, a lot of things. But no, I'm not that. I'm not conservative. I'm definitely just a wannabe Marxist. I'm retreating into wannabe Marxist. But nonetheless, it reached me. Right, the what is a woman campaign reached my eyeballs, and somehow, and it was an intelligently done campaign, and you've seen the movie, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I think the movie is largely wrongheaded and misguided, but it was really well done. It's for that kind of thing. It did its job very well. I watched it with my kid. Actually, my kid Noah says, "Dad, You cannot watch this movie on your own. I don't trust you to watch it on your own. You need a guide. You need someone there, because you're going to just become a transphobe by the end of it. I'm like, no. And it's like, no, I'll watch it with you. And by the end, by the way, I had to work with him to go through it and pick it apart. And
Well, I mean, you should make that video. Why haven't you?
I will, because I've been stuck making these Guy Debord Society of the Spectacle
Right.
videos.
Yeah, but I mean, if you've got strong opinions about the documentary, I mean, it's so I mean, it's such a hot topic. But yeah, I mean, one of the things, like, we talk about the ability to really reach your niche. I mean, Shapiro, and the dude is clearly very gifted. The guy is obviously extremely smart. His rhetoric skills, his debate skills are pretty unmatched. I mean, the dude is obviously like some kind of like savant in some way. I mean, just the way how fast he speaks, but he's also very, very good at being very manipulative. And I think that one of the things that he does that makes it so successful is that he just constantly just leaning in and doubling down to the fact that, like, if any of the things that he complains about resonates with you, then you have a moral obligation to subscribe to the Daily Wire. And of course that's going to resonate with a lot of people who are just so frustrated with, all of the various kind of excesses of, whatever, like class agnostic scapegoating, neoliberal,
Right.
whatever the fuck is going on.
But you compare that to like the success of Daily Wire, which I think it started as a YouTube show, or maybe not, maybe it's a radio program or something else, but it is on YouTube. The success of that platform and compared to like College Humor, which had a long track record of producing funny videos and articles, and had a good amount of money behind it, and which they tried to create a platform just for their own content, and never quite got to the subscription level they needed to in order to break even. And what is it about the Daily Wire that makes it more successful than a College Humor?
I mean, the value proposition is just incomparable. I mean, with College Humor, it's, if you laugh at our content, you can pay and laugh some more. But chances are, if you spend maybe 10 minutes on YouTube, you'll find some other free stuff that will also make you laugh. But with the Daily Wire, they really market themselves as, hey, we're here to save the world. We're here to make sure that your worldview, the thing that you hold most sacred, doesn't get snuffed out completely. And the only way that you can help make sure that happens is by giving us money. I mean, that is so much more of a compelling offer than for College Humor.
Why isn't there a left-wing version of it? I mean, there's Means TV, right? But that hasn't taken off nearly as well as College.
Yeah,
Daily Wire.
Well, I don't. Does Chapo Trap House not do something similar to that? What about what is Crystal Ball part of? What is that called?
It's called
Breaking Points.
Breaking Points. But Breaking Points is not exclusively left. It's like it's populist, and it has a right wing and a left wing host, and it's a news show, and it's not. It's a podcast. So like, there's what's the difference between a podcast with the Patreon and a paywall, and a platform like Daily Wire, which is producing this like movies and all these different kinds of shows and.
Right. Well, I guess
Chapo doesn't produce other content. They just record an audio podcast every week, one for their subscribers and one for the general audience, I think. So
now I'm just like guessing here, getting into Shapiro's head, and depending on how ambitious he is, and I'm assuming he's extremely ambitious, is that because if you have your own platform, you own all the data, and then you become another ad network. So basically, like the way that all these tech companies, Apple, Google, all the I don't know, Unity, Iron Source is like they just merged and it was like this huge multi-billion-dollar deal, is because they're able to harness data to make very targeted ads, and that's like the biggest money maker in town in terms of content advertising. And so if the Daily Wire is able to take you off of YouTube and get you to their native platform, where they're able to harness all of your data and they get enough people that are consuming their content, then they can start understanding, okay, these people really are into buying clothing. These people are into that. And then they can start commanding very high prices for ads because they can guarantee that they're targeted towards the appropriate person. So that's the benefit of getting off of a platform and creating your own.
Right. So let me ask you this: as we've been talking for nearly an hour, I think we've almost got this in the bag. But where are you going with Jared Bauer at YouTube? Is it just still a hobby project, or do you feel like it's developing into something more substantial?
I'm really kind of just waiting to feel inspired, to be honest. I mean, I'm kind of maintaining it, and I'm having fun doing it. I feel like a lot of times I'm just doing a lot of content tests, in the sense that I'm also constantly learning about how this algorithm ticks, because, like, I'm not saying that I'm making content cynically in any way, but if I have an idea that I am into, I'll go ahead and produce it and see if it kind of, violates or supports a hypothesis I have about how this platform works. Ultimately, it's really a place for me to, if I feel like I have thoughts that I want to put out there. Usually, I mean, I'm happiest when I'm making content just about entertainment. South Park movies, the problem is that, there's so few movies out that are really seemingly even worth talking about these days. Like, so often, like, there's The Gray Man that just came out, the $200 million Netflix movie, and the reviews on it are so poor, and all of the talk about it is that it's so mundane. I just can't even bring myself to watch it. Like, life is just too short. So, right now I'm happiest when I'm making content about the thing that I know best, which is definitely entertainment. I'm still reading a fair amount. I'm still passionate about philosophy. And, if I find insights that I think are ones that I want to share, I have a place to do that. So right now it's just kind of like my personal exploration of trying to kind of find my own beliefs, because I oftentimes feel very politically homeless, and I'm, not unaffected by the disturbingly high fever pitch of the culture war these days. And I find myself constantly second guessing my my biases, my opinions, my attempts to make sense of these things. And so the channel's also my attempt to do that.
Mm-hmm. Do you have any plans to create your own Jared Bauer platform and people can go and subscribe? And
no, I don't think that would do very well. I think that would just be a lot of work.
Right.
No, not as of now. But
after this conversation,
but again, I think I already said this. I don't know if we were live or this was before, but I do want to again really congratulate you and compliment the quality. I mean, you're really attracting just some really, really interesting thinkers regularly on your videos. I learn a lot watching your videos. I think all of the podcasts are really insightful. I mean, I've watched hours and hours of your content. Probably, like, in the last 3 months, I've probably watched more time of Sublation Media content than any other content. All your videos are long, but I mean, I've oftentimes got long periods of just playing video games, and I just put on one of your podcasts, and I find them always very insightful.
Oh, well, thank you very much. I'm going to take that clip and put it up as make an ad out of it. As Jared Bauer from Wisecrack says, blah, blah, blah.
Well, you know what you should do if you want some of the algorithm bump. This is complete hearsay, but they say that, YouTube is desperately trying to compete with TikTok, so they'll reward you if you make YouTube shorts. So that's also something I've been experimenting with, but that's also something you should do. I mean, you've got so much content with these podcasts, just, little 30-second bite-sized stuff.
And just put them out as shorts.
On
the and maybe on TikTok as well. Will they be able to track if I've put it on both? Because I have a TikTok as well, but I have no idea how to use TikTok.
I don't fuck around with that. I'm too old for that.
I don't have the figure for it. Because for me, this is when I'm on TikTok, somehow the algorithm just serves me up these young ladies with the certain kind of figures. I don't know. It's just one after the other. Keep me there for an hour. All right. Maybe that will be cut out.
It is sometimes very interesting to hear what the algorithm thinks of you. Like, for me, my YouTube algorithm just thinks for some reason, they think I'm the biggest Jordan Peterson fan in the world, because I get, it seems like every other video that's recommended to me is either Jordan Peterson clip, something from his YouTube channel, someone else's Jordan Peterson fan page. I feel like I've maybe watched 2 Jordan Peterson's videos this year, but the algorithm is still convinced that I'm going to be the biggest fan.
So here's what the algorithm thinks I want to watch right now. This will be how we conclude. A Seinfeld animation. So someone took a clip of Seinfeld and animated it. A mix of music, starting with George Harrison's song "Got My Mind Set on You." Star Wars: Do We Believe Disney on Obi-Wan Kenobi by Jared Bauer.
Oh, that's me. Yeah.
What's the appeal of Herschel Walker, Glenn Lowry, and John McWhorter? And then
see, people are going to think you're conservative with that one.
Yeah, I know. Then like Tuba Girl. I don't know what that is. YouTube is an unfair platform that hates most creators. That's and the Brandenburg Concerto No. 3.
Okay, so it thinks that you're a man of class and like comedy and I don't know. It doesn't sound as bad as mine.
No, if I scroll down, the top news are, that's just corporate news. There's Red Letter Media on here. Almost always Red Letter Media pops up.
Oh yeah.
There's another
that's good stuff.
Yeah, that's a YouTube channel that's really unique and I want to study it and figure out how the hell they did that.
Oh yeah. I mean, those guys gave birth to the to the video essay. At least like on digital media, when Mr. Plinkett made his Star Wars Episode 1 hour-and-a-half long video, that was the first time anyone had seen like an analysis of a movie on the internet. And like before that, no one would even think that would be something appealing.